record, my brother.
Nick, my man, happy anniversary, I guess.
It is what 100 episodes? That can't be true.
Depend. Well, it is like actually we've even a few more because we recorded a few that never got aired. So it depends on how you count, but yeah, we've done it for just a little bit over 4 years or 4.5 years or something, and we're hitting 100. I don't think
Wow.
when we started that we. I don't think we. Yeah, I don't know what we were thinking, but
No, it was you. We
well, yeah,
started in
but
COVID, and you're just Zooming with everybody, and you and I would actually just call. Like even now, before the podcast, we'd start talking, and then we could talk for 2 hours just to each
yeah.
other on Zoom. And you're like, "What are we doing? We should record this and make a podcast." That was your idea, right?
Well, it was yeah, I guess at some level it was my idea, but you immediately said, yeah, let's do it. I don't know. Like, were you a
Yeah.
podcast fan at that time? I mean, were you listening to podcasts or
Well,
anything?
yeah. I mean, Joe Rogan, of course, and then there were a few others. I like this podcast, so I would always, and these are non-academic podcasts, but I would always listen to this podcast called The Art of Manliness. Have you ever heard of this?
Of course you do.
It sounds awful, but it's actually a really nice podcast. The guy who does it is a super intelligent guy, and it's very much about self-help. All right. So what can you do if you want to lose weight, if you want to exercise? So I listened to that podcast. Uh, and he's actually got a little program where it's like the strenuous life, which I like. This idea of pursuing the strenuous life. Here at Notre Dame, we have a coach. The way he recruits people is, if they choose hard, if you're choosing the harder course of action, you come here to Notre Dame because we don't give you an easy way with the academics. We don't get, you have to do it the hard way.
That's what I tell my PhD students. You can get your PhD degree anywhere. If you do it here, we do it right and we do it the hard way.
We do
I'm
it
not
the
sure
hard
that's
way.
true, though.
And it's
Yeah.
like people self-select into the hard and the difficult, right? So, and I don't know how we got on that. What's your podcast? You must you listen to German podcasts?
I do. I listen to a couple of international ones. I listen to Joe Rogan or Huberman Lab. I think we talked about them. Every now and then I listen to the Ezra Klein show. Not too much, too political. Freakonomics podcast I like. Just
Yeah, I like
like
that one too.
yeah, and in Germany. See, the story is that I got into podcasts because a PhD, an IS PhD student in Cologne, Pascal, he came up to me and said like, you should listen to this. Gemischtes Hack, the German listeners would know this podcast. You will love it. And I listened to it and I love it and it's amazing. By the way, this Gemischtes Hack is worldwide. It's the second most successful podcast behind Joe Rogan, which is
Wow.
amazing because it's in German by some German comedian dudes. So, like by definition, you have a very limited audience and it's the second biggest and second most successful on the planet behind Joe Rogan. That's crazy if you think about it. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I love that one. That's really good. And I'm pretty sure that all of our German listeners would know that one too. Everyone knows it
Yeah.
apparently.
And then what I do now is I just cherry pick. So I'll listen to like Lex Friedman, I'll listen to Galloway, I'll listen
Yeah,
to,
I do that too.
you
Yeah.
know, I don't know what else, but I'll just jump around to the big ones when they have a good guest or something.
So, and here we are 4.5 years later, and we thought, what would we do? Like at some stage, I thought we'd do a blooper episode where I kind of cut out all the horrible things we said over the years. But then I would have to listen to 100 episodes to find these pieces, and I was just too lazy to do that.
No.
And instead, we decided we'll do a Ask Us Anything episode. And, we asked around. We basically put a Google form on the internet and said, people send us questions. And I was a bit scared, to be honest, because I thought, like, what do we do if we don't get any questions?
Yeah, what if no one asks us a question? Yeah.
But we got shitloads. We got so many questions that it's impossible for us to answer all of them. So sorry in advance if we didn't pick your question. So we had to pick a few of those because they're just too many, which is great, I guess. But so we picked a few that we can discuss today, and maybe we'll do a follow-up episode and discuss a few more because apparently the people have lots of questions.
Yeah. And then we had a couple, like Stan, our biggest fan, said, can you send us some feet pics, please? So
Yeah, I don't know where that is coming from. Like my feed are from a 45-year-old man. I don't know what you're expecting, but it's not good.
no, but that's like perverts, right? They're always telling famous, especially women, to send them feet pics, I think so that was
Yeah,
funny.
Stan the man, you're not getting any pictures from my feet, that's for sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about Nick.
Hey,
Nick's probably is happy to send pictures from his feet, but I don't want to
I
see them.
mean, I don't know what he's going to do with my feet pictures, though. So I think I'll just keep them to myself. All right. And then here's one Zoso said, when you guys hug, who feels it more?
That one I can answer. That's definitely me.
Why do
Because
you feel it?
first of all, you're a wrestler, dude. You're a very strong person. Also, you got that manliness thing because you think that you have to show how strong you are. So when you hug me, I hear my bones crack.
Oh, come on. I feel like when you hug someone, you should hug them. None of this half-assed like side hug business, right? All right. If I'm
No.
gonna hug you, if I'm gonna hug anyone, you hug people. That's
Yeah.
the yeah. So I don't know.
So people, if you're interested, should you be interested other than so we do hug seriously. We give each other serious hugs, not one of
Yeah.
these, hey bro, how you doing stuff. But I definitely feel it.
Big, nice two-armed hugs.
Yeah,
That's what I like
exactly.
to do.
True. Absolutely.
Although I'll tell you this, and I do that, men, women, whoever, if I know you well, I give you a hug. But then academics, it's so funny because there are so many friends that I have that are like women, and you go with you want to put your hand out to handshake because you don't want to do the hug. Like it's presumptuous, isn't it, for a guy to go hug a woman without her hugging first, right? So it is a little weird, unless I know them super well to
I
hug a.
seriously never even thought about that.
Well, all right. I like hugs. Oh, this is another. All right, we'll go in order like you wanted to, but I thought this was a funny one. Bear fan, what kind of bear is best?
Yeah. Well, I was at UBC 15 years ago at a sabbatical, and like you can go up to Goose Mountains and Whistler and all these sorts of things, and they're freaking grizzly bears. I mean, like in a wild park, it's not in the absolute wild, but boy, that is a massive beast, like a real grizzly. It
Yeah.
looked like a 4 by 2 meter giant thing.
Yeah.
So grizzlies are pretty. If you see a grizzly in the wild, I imagine that's a pretty freaking intimidating thing.
Yeah. So you say grizzlies are best. I might agree. Polar bears have their own advantages. Koala bears, I mean, those guys are high all the time, right?
Yeah, freaking high.
They are. I guess they get high from the eucalyptus. So
Yeah,
those things,
absolutely.
there's like the stoner of bears. Uh, so it depends what you mean by best.
Actually, the one I like the best, I think it's called Malayan bear or something. That's the one that looks like it has glasses on. Like it has a
Yeah.
really. Anyway, I like that one. It's kind of like a bit of an outsider bear.
Yeah. And
But
pandas.
grizzlies are freaking huge. I mean, I'll go with that one. Grizzlies are
All right.
massive.
All right. Grizzlies are best. All right. We should get to some academic questions that we had. Let's start at the top. Do we say people's names who asked the question or no?
Uh, don't know, to be honest. I mean, like if they gave us the name, I guess they're fine with that. I think that's fine. Yeah.
All
So
right. So,
Philip,
so Philip Stout from
yeah,
Oldenburg
that's a place in
asked,
Germany. Yep.
what was the non-academic book that you found most useful or most inspired you for research? Hmm.
Yeah, I have a couple of answers there. I mean, one of them, which is kind of like a semi-scientific book, which is one of the most brilliant things I've read in recent years, which is the Book of Eels. Would
Oh,
you
that was a great
classify
one.
that as an academic book or
Yeah,
as a
but how did it
fictional book?
affect your research? It's not academic, but it's a great book.
It's like, how does that not instill in you a love for science and for research and for solving, like finding an explanation for an apparent mystery? I think that's what that book is about. People, the Book of Eels, it's sort of it's a story about science, but it also has fictional elements in it. Like anyway, so it's a weird blend. It's not really a non-academic book, but that is a great book about the mystery that is eels. It's amazing. It's Anyway, so I really like this kind of book. Makes me want to be a scientist and
Right.
makes me want to do research and find explanations, not even solutions, just understand what's going on, which is still the drive I have to this day. I get I want to build solutions. I want to make the world a better. I get that. But in my heart, I want to know why things are the way they are. And I think that's a great example for that. It doesn't want to make the eels better, but it has a lot of
Yeah.
mysteries about the eels that we don't know. And I think that is
Dude,
just fascinating.
you're arguing against yourself because we just had an interchange, you and I, of you were like, we need to do things that matter and do this. And I'm like, no, we're inquirers. If we want to go be consultants and politicians and whoever else, yeah, we can do that. But our job is actually to inquire, to have strict, yeah. And the Book of
You're
Eels,
right. You're
well,
right.
it's
And
pure
that
inquiry.
that dialogue that we're having outside of the podcast, like I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a strict person. So, but I'll give you another one which I really did inspire me, which is A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah.
The people will know the movie, but it's based on a book. It's based on the biography of John Nash.
Yeah.
by Samia Nazar, won a Pulitzer, I think, and that is
Hmm.
a fabulous book. I mean, like it paints a picture of John Nash, the mathematician, etc. Um, and I read that, I can't remember, 20 years ago, and I really, 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 really like that. I watched the movie first, but as usual, the book is a lot better than the movie, and the movie isn't half bad.
Yeah.
I'll go with that one.
All right. I'm going to give you two of mine just because I want to answer this. We don't have to answer both of us all of these questions, but I want to
Sure.
answer this one because there were a couple that popped into my head. The first was Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. We talked about it in the podcast, but this actually inspired me to write a paper, which I'm writing right now.
Oh, is that right? I read that. I read that just like 2 months ago because my old
Yeah.
advisor, Michael Roseman, he just gave that to me when I was in Australia, and I read it. It's a really good book, Viktor Frankl.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, I've read it a couple times in my life, the most recent time in the last couple of years. And it just, so again, it's kind of a scientific book because the guy was a psychologist and Viktor Frankl had his approach, which by the way, I like. His
Oh yeah.
approach to psychotherapy is the biggest problem we have with therapy is that people talk about themselves. And that is the whole source of their mental problems. Uh, for some people, of course, right? But he's like the key to having is meaning, right? To getting through the Holocaust. It's a book about the Holocaust, uh, and it's
It's
meaning in your
meaning.
life. And really, I was thinking about it. The difference between AI and humans, in the end, when AI can do everything we
Oh,
can rationally, is going to be around this idea of meaning. So that's
I
the
like
paper
that
I'm writing
idea.
right now. Uh, and it's my only solo authored paper, the only paper I'm leading at the moment that's not already that I've started. So, and it's going very slowly, as you can imagine. But yeah, and it
But I
was
like
inspired
it,
by that
dude.
book.
That's a very nice idea. Also,
Yeah,
it's a very good book. People should go and read it. It's
yeah.
kind of like two books, right? It's sort of like first his Holocaust story, and then second his idea about therapy. But anyway, good book. Yeah.
So I'll give you another book that I read a couple of times. The first time I read it, I was a kid. Second time I read it was during my PhD when I was reading about complexity theory. And I read Ashby's Law of Requisite Variety.
Come on, that's an academic
No,
book.
no, but I read it right around the time that I read again Ender's Game,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is
Well,
Orson Scott Card. And it's this cool story about, basically we're battling aliens, right?
some
And
alien race. Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
really cool book. Everyone in my family, I was reading it first to make sure it was good for my daughter, who at that point was whatever, 10 years old. And, and yeah, the point is, it's a really good illustration. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but at one point there's a battle where people can't communicate with each other, but they have to go across huge distances in this battle. And it very much illustrates requisite variety. Stafford Beer was trying to set up an economy in Argentina at the time. There was like this communist revolution of Argentina, and they wanted a centrally planned economy. So Stafford Beard, who's a cybernetics dude, there's a book about this, by the way. I forget what it's called. Uh, but he was trying to set it up in Argentina, and really the Ender's Game, the book, which is phenomenal. If people haven't read Ender's Game, they have to read it. It's one of the greatest science fiction
Well,
books
I
of all.
haven't read it. I've watched the movie.
Oh, the movie's awful with like Harrison Ford, right?
I can't
Awful,
remember. Like, but with a
horrible.
kid, like the kid
Yeah,
that
yeah,
and yeah. Anyway, yeah.
yeah. All right.
All right, let's move on. Next question. Maybe you can take that one, although I have a view on that as well. Stefan asks, what would you recommend a new assistant professor to focus on in their first 100 days? That's a nice question. So you just started, you're freshly minute, first 3 months of your, tenure as assistant professor. What should you do?
Yeah, I would just say build habits where you take time each week and there's no interference that time. That's your research and review time. I don't know. I'd say 3 days a week. The other 2 to 4 days are for teaching and administrative duties and all of that. But as an assistant professor, you can block off time in a way that more senior people can't. And I would just say be very greedy, jealous, and block off 3 days a week for teaching and research and don't schedule meetings, don't do anything in those 3 days, right? So,
I like that very much. I have completely different advice. My advice would be I have two pieces of advice. One of them is actually plan a portfolio of what you're going to do. And I don't mean like fuzzy, like build an Excel spreadsheet or whatever you use and saying, this is what I'm doing. This is my networks. These are the papers. This is when I work on these. Like be structured,
yeah.
be a little bit systematic in building a plan for the next, for your tenure clock time. So
Yeah.
at least in the next couple of years. And of course, the shorter time frames, you want to plan a little bit more vigorously, and longer time frames, like what you do over the next 4 years, just roughly, right? Because life will interfere. That's number one. The second one is run around, get to know really what your faculty, like your next door neighbors, figure out what every one of them is doing and how you might find points of connections.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good
build a
point.
network, and not just a network of, meet Nick Parenti at the next conference. No, what is the next door neighbor in finance? What is he doing? Yeah, so like in your immediate physical environment, go and find some connections and spend some research and really get to know what your colleagues are doing and see whether you can collaborate, because that'll be your best chance of actually setting off new collaborations. Whether you're first or second, I don't care. Author, just build some connections to your faculty around you. That has so many benefits. Yeah, that's what I would do in the first 100 days of your assistant professor time. Get
Cool.
to know your faculty.
All right, Sylvia asks. So she's thanks us for our amazing podcast. Very sweet. I've been a longtime listener. My question is, how do I pivot research themes as a senior assistant prof? So this is someone who probably has enough for tenure or getting close, and I feel that my current research is not as impactful as I would like it to be. I want to be known for something that I care about, and I want to work on something that I have strong impact on the world, especially in these daunting times. So here's someone who's proven they can do some research at a good level, and it's like, yeah, but I'm looking at it, and it's this incremental stuff. I want to do something that I could be known for and that's impacting the world. What do you tell that person?
Well, my first advice is like go and freaking do that. That's my first. Like, if you think your work is not as impactful, if you have a stronger passion for a different type of question, pursue that question. Now, I would qualify that response by saying, like, she writes like senior assistant prof. I don't know exactly what that means. So, a handicap could be the tenure clock. Let's be very honest and realistic here. So it might be that you need to do the things that are you're most productive about to make sure you really get into the system, like get that safety, get that, etc. and so forth. So maybe, and this is something that I've done, maybe you want to switch topic after you get tenure. Yeah, but then I would definitely go like, look, if there's this particular question, this burning issue that you feel passionate about, that is really what you should be doing. And it could be a societal thing, or it could be just a topic that you like better, or it could be a topic where you think there's more impact, etc. I've switched topics, and it was one of the best things I ever did. I really did. I'm more happy. It's more impact, etc., and so forth. And of course, it comes with a steep learning curve. You will lose time in catching up with whatever the topic area is about, whether it's a theory, phenomenon, method, or whatever, because you'll have to learn, you have to catch up, and it'll take a while. It takes some years, so you need to be in a position where you can give yourself a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but I would say definitely do this, especially in these daunting times. Whatever your reason
yeah,
is, go follow your passion.
yeah. See, I would give totally different advice,
That's good.
and this is the advice I would give. If you want to go impact the world, go work for Greenpeace or go be a politician or go be a consultant, right? If you want to have short-term impact or if you want to write things and you want people, go be a journalist. All right. We're a scholar. So I'm thinking, all right, in the 20th century, which scholar, who impacted the world the most? Like, and I would probably say of the scholars we admire, Herb Simon is certainly among them, right? Herb Simon, from a scholarly impact on the world, I mean, he created one of the people who created the field of artificial intelligence. He created the field of cognitive science. He created design field. I mean, he was incredible. So look at his career. He started his PhD in like 1933. He started as a political science professor in 1942. He wrote administrative behavior in 56. So he started as an assistant professor somewhere in 1942, and his big work with Alan Newell and then he did his stuff with James March. That was 67. So he did it all 15 years after he started as an assistant professor. What did he do in that time? He learned how to do science. He was actually understanding the theories. He was getting deep, deep, deep knowledge in certain areas. And then for about a decade, 15, 20 years, he changed the world. But first, he understood what the hell he was talking about. So, my advice for a junior faculty who wants to impact the world is actually know something. Unless you want to go be a journalist, write a pop culture, pop science book, if there are those other paths, you can go do that. But if you want to actually substantively, substantially, deeply change the world in a meaningful way as a scholar, the only way I think you do that is by going deep, know something. And I think too many people right now know their method and they apply it to a bunch of problems and then they feel like it's trivial, but they don't know it deeply. They're not getting deep, deep, deep into an area, deep, deep, deep into a problem, into a theoretical base. That's what you have to do. Know your shit, spend 20 years knowing your shit, and know it better than anybody else. And then, yeah, then you can change the world perhaps with that knowledge you've gained.
Yeah, maybe a little side story. When we were in Australia, me and my family, we went to a little place in Queensland called Monrepos. No one knows what Monrepos is, but it's actually the place for science on turtles, on sea turtles. They have
Hmm.
of all the seven species we have on the planet, for some reason they're all there. Yeah. And this place is run, Monrepos is the scientific station for research on turtles and interventions and, helping all sorts of things. And it's run by a guy who, as a junior assistant prof, started setting it up in the 60s. So you see a little video and he's still around. He's like an 80-year-old dude now. And you see him doing his research with the turtles in the water as a hippie and, with long hair in the 60s. And this is a really mind-blowing experience when you go and visit this turtle center. And when you look very closely what this guy has done, he picked problems. There were problems at the time. Now in the 70s this could have been like plastic in the ocean. In the 80s this was something else. In the 90s something else, etc. So he picked a problem and he very carefully worked on this for about 10
Yeah.
years until he really found the solution. And then with a growing recognition, his things get implemented into policies, which
Right.
is why the turtles are actually better off than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And right now,
Yeah.
the current thing is global warming because the water gets too high and that changes the breeding behavior, whatever. So he's working on fixing that and like understanding that problem and fixing the solution. And when
Yeah.
he's done with that, he's going to pick the next one. This is amazing scientific work, but it's very careful, very slow, very good
Yeah.
science. On turtles of all things, right? And he
Yeah.
built a fantastic career and a beautiful place out of that. And it's in a tiny little place called Monrepos in Queensland. It's really
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, now everyone doesn't have to impact the world because I look at my own research and I have no ambitions to change the world or do anything. I enjoy this is almost indulgent. I like working with young people. I like coming up with, clever ideas, moving theory along and doing research, doing empirical work and thinking and I think it's a luxury to do so. So I have no great ambitions about impacting the world. I like the idea of doing good scholarship. I think I get joy out of the craft that I've chosen uh, just doing it. Now, so not everyone has to impact the world and change the world, but my recommendation is if you really want to impact the world deep, just like your turtle guy, understand something deeply, then you can actually impact it. And I think too many times when academics hear about impacting the world, they think, oh, I must be writing HBR articles and I have to be out there, determining policy. Yeah, they're not qualified to, frankly, no, few academics are qualified to be making any policies. Neither are policymakers for that matter. But we are hypocrites when we do it because we know better. Uh, and you look at HBR, the vast majority of those, articles are like pop. They're not evidence-based advice to practitioners. They're just
Yeah,
advice.
and very often you later find out that whatever the research was is actually flawed and
Mm.
inconclusive at best. So yeah, I hear you. Okay, yeah, well that's good. I mean, like you could turn it around. You can work on problems that you find are really really relevant. Just make
Yeah.
sure that you actually do science. Like
Yeah.
explaining, understanding, analyzing, fact finding evidence, do that, and not be a what do you call, don't be a megaphone and shouting your opinions because the world is full of people that give us their opinions. We don't need another one.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this right now, since about 2018, I've decided I'm going to research AI ethics. And I don't have papers. I'm just starting to. I have a couple little papers that are out on the topic, but I'm learning. about ethics, and I'm learning about ethical systems, and I'm reading, and I don't have. I'm starting to do research, but I think that's what you want to do. Learn, know your shit first, then attempt to impact the world. All right, did we beat that one to a dead
We did.
horse?
I'm gonna do a very quick one. This is rapid fire question, Nick. Really quickly, who was your favorite podcast guest?
This is so hard because we have wonderful podcast guests. But when I saw this, you know who popped into my head? The very first season, I think we had Kathy Orcourt on,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she talked about grounded theory and really doing it. And she called it naughty grounded theory
yeah.
with her, accent.
British.
She
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
wonderful, I thought. And for anybody doing grounded theory, that was, I thought, a great podcast because she's one of the people who write about grounded. She knows her. She speaking about people who know their shit. She
She
knows her
knows her
shit
shit.
when it comes
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
grounded theory, and I think it's a really I wish all editors, reviewers, and authors would listen to that podcast before they spout off about grounded theory. That was probably we had great guests, but that was probably my favorite. How about you?
Yeah, yeah. I immediately thought of Kathy as well, so I go with that one. But the one that always makes me smirks and always turn back to this is just the episode with Vladimir, just because I think we really we laughed a lot while we were recording and producing this episode. So just for that, it's a great episode. Like this guy's been running JMIS for 45 years. It's just like it's great to tap into these people's knowledge and understand, their views and what they've been doing. So this is great. But I'm just smiling all the time when I think about this episode.
That
So
was
I'll
a
go with
cool
the one
one.
with Vladimir.
Yeah, with that one, we were talking offline and we said we're going to start now, and we're like, all right, we're starting, and he just went into it. Right? You had to record an intro after the fact.
Yeah, so people, he just like when we pressed the record button, Vladimir was just going off. Like he was starting some story and it took minutes, which is a long time in a podcast. And Nick and I had no idea what he was talking about. And of course, we
You
didn't
just
have any opening. So afterwards, after the fact, we produced a little opening that makes it sound like we asked him a question. But when we were recording, we had no idea what he was talking about.
yeah,
We got there eventually, of course. But yeah, so
yeah, he was
that
cool.
was a great one as well. Yeah.
And there were a lot of good ones, but yeah, those are two noteworthy ones. All right, Yoshka.
Yeah, Joska.
Uh,
From the Netherlands, from Twente.
the demand of academia can be excessive, and it comes easy to many scholars to work extensively, including evenings, weekends, or conferences during the holiday season. I know a person who worked on their honeymoon. How do you manage your family and friends when the next thing is always around the corner? And then there's a secondary question. How do you manage managing and educating students, PhD and masters and whatever? But let's start with the first one. How do you manage your family and friends when, that's the thing about academia, Wrecker. You can fill every waking moment with papers and reviews and everything. So how do you manage that?
Well, I feel like we talked about that in one of the episodes where we talked about why we love academia. And what I love about academia is that this is one of the most flexible and free jobs you're ever going to find in your world. But that means you'll have to, like to me, it means you have to make use of that flexibility. It means that if there is some other priority, and that means my kids, my wife, my family, my friends, I will prioritize them. So yeah, we all work a lot. Like the last couple of weeks, my wife told me I've worked shitloads, etc. Except when there's something else on, like I have to take my kids to whatever. Like so, I'll do that because I can, and I'm so happy that I can do this because most people that I know in other regular they just simply can't. Like their work environment doesn't allow them to do this, and it does this. So my answer would be, well, I prioritize them because I can
Yeah.
and you have to. And I know, of course, I know friends and colleagues, etc., who don't and who forgot that simple fact that this is a flexible job, and you don't have to worry about your hours because you freaking fill your hours anyway because there's always
Yeah.
something to do. So we all work a lot, so may as well take that Tuesday between 2 and 5 and go watch your kid play handball or whatever it is. Yeah, do
Yeah.
that because you can.
Yeah. I have three kids. I coached all of them in soccer when they were 7, 8 years old, when they were the little kids and starting. So, and I just made that a point that I'm going to coach all of them in soccer. And then my son, he wrestled. So I coached him. I was actually one of the coaches on his wrestling club until he went to high school. So you can do it. And I was very busy with work. And, it's just a matter of prioritization. You just take certain things, you block it off, and you do it. The thing about academia, though, you're absolutely right. We can be flexible, especially if you're a performer. So there are only two things I'd add to what you say. The first is you don't have to work excessively. You and
Yeah.
I are arguably in the upper tier of our field as far as productivity, right? We decided at some point in our lives we're going to be very ambitious in this career. And for our various reasons that we've talked about in past podcasts, right?
Yeah.
You're a little bit competitive, and for me, I think I'm a workaholic, and no matter what I would do, the reason I joined academia is from the outside, I thought it was like, you're going to take it easy. And then when I got inside, I realized that I'm a workaholic and I'll continue to be. But here's the thing, you don't have to be. In the United States, there are 800 accredited business schools. Not all of them require you to work all day, every day, right? There's 100 of those are like research heavy. And if you're going to be in that kind of upper eighth of the research producers, you probably have to work all the time. But you could be a teaching faculty, you could be, there are all levels of ambition. So the question
Yeah.
is, how ambitious are you? And this is what people who whine in academia about how much we work. If you go outside of academia, it's the same thing. If you're a consultant and you want to be one of the best, and guess what? You're working all the time. If you're a salesman and you want to be the best, and you're working all the time. If you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is you're doing, if you want to do a really excellent job, it can fill up every minute of your life. The nice thing is we're more flexible in those other roles typically. And it's like, it's not about academia. It's about how ambitious are you?
I agree.
And it really drives me nuts when these people want to be like, hey, I need work-life balance, and I want to be an editor at a top journal, and I want to get tenure at top schools, but I don't want to work so hard because I have a family, I have a spouse, I have children. And, well, it's like, that's the traditional compromise, isn't it? And I think you can actually have a better balance in academia and still work at the top than other fields. But, at the same time, excellence, you can't do everything always, right?
No, excellence needs investment. It's simple. Like, like whatever you call it, the 10,000 hours or whatever else, like no one gets there's no shortcuts. You gotta put the work in. And my wife and I, we have very constant, I guess, very dynamic conversations about balancing the various commitments, like her career, my career, the kids, the family, our love life, whatever it has. So we just constantly make adjustments to that. That's the reality. So at
Yeah.
the moment, she needs to put in more work for whatever reason, and because she wants to. And I'll, like I'm carving out more afternoons where I will literally not be working.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it is, and it'll change again. It has changed in the past, so it feels like every year we have a very different arrangement. So,
Yeah. It's like you
which is
prioritized your
great.
career for a little bit of it, and then now maybe you're prioritizing
And
her
now it's a little
career,
bit
but
more her time, which is a good thing, all right. And as the kids get older, these things have changed. Of course, when we had babies, which we don't have anymore now that 5 years later in the podcast, the priorities change, and also the taking care of kids situation, what that actually means changes, and we're
yeah.
just adapting to that. So we do this, but I don't feel guilty at all. Like I know that I'm not working little. I know I work very hard, but I'm also not. I'm not putting in 200 hours a week. I don't. Like I can't, and I don't. But I'm trying to maximize what I get out of every freaking hour of that I work.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
I'll tell you this, I do know this. When the kids were little and I was working my ass off and I was prioritizing spending time with them, when I spent time with them, I was spending time with them. I was very focused, very hands-on. I thought I was a good dad, but my wife took care of it when I wasn't spending time with them. So I was very fortunate there that my wife could do that. But the fact is, I know people who, don't necessarily spend that much quality time with their kids, right? But
Well,
then
yeah,
they're
and I know this
prioritizing
is
it.
where we
Right?
disagree. But for example, when we go on a holiday, like for a week or whatever, I'm not bringing my laptop. And I think most people that I know,
Yeah.
including you, I think you'd bring your
Yeah.
laptop. Stefan brings his laptop. Like
Yeah.
I don't like, and that automatically, like the device is gone. I'm on my phone, right? Because like emails are still there, but I can't write anything,
Yeah.
whatever. So I am literally more focused on my kids and whatever else we're doing, and that's the entire
Yeah.
point. And I think that's fine, and I think it's good for me too. And because I feel really, just a day or two or three or 7, it really like I want to work. I want to come back and
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and what'll happen is when your kids get older, because once they start getting teenagers, they start sleeping in. So it's like
Yeah,
my wife and kids are sleeping in when you're on
yeah, man.
vacation till 10, 11, noon. And then it's like you're up, I'm up at 5:30 or 6. And it's like, what
Yeah,
am I
me
going to do
too.
for 4 hours before? And that's what
And
I,
that's the best time to work. I like getting up at 6, grab a coffee, sit in a laptop. I'm really sharp at that time. Like I like
yeah.
it. So I'll keep on doing this. All right, like come on, let's do one or two more, and then we'll deal with the other questions some other time.
All right. So we'll do part A and part B.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's let's go into this one. We have, and there, I guess this one was anonymous. When tenured faculty set absurdly high expectations, 6 or more A hits for untenured faculty, what are they worried about, or what are they trying to prevent? I thought that's a cool question, isn't it?
Yeah, but honestly, what my honest answer is, I think this
Hmm.
question is wrong. Like,
Why?
what happens with these expectations? Like the paradox, well, the weird situation is always that you're being evaluated by the committee that doesn't meet the expectation they're setting towards you.
Yes.
But of course, that's what it is because whenever it was their time, they had to meet higher expectation than the people that were evaluating them at that time. This is just
Yeah.
market mechanisms, right? We're all getting better. The field is getting better. Everyone's getting smarter. The techniques, et cetera, and so forth. The expectations go up. It's a buyer supplier market depending what the market does at that time. So no, yeah, well, you're asking for 6 papers because that's the currency
Yeah.
that's the price at the moment. That's what it is. And it doesn't matter that the people that were evaluating them had a different price when they were in the same market. That's just how the market operates. So that's
Yeah.
I don't think they're not evil or anything. It's just they're gauging the market and what a good price
Yeah.
would be. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah, I think there are two ways. The first is the market, and it's competition. It's like you're at University of Hamburg, I'm at Notre Dame. We don't want Hamburg and Notre Dame to somehow, you don't want whatever Cologne and Munster and all of these places to have great researchers where your researchers are at a lower level than all of them. So you want to make sure when you're tenuring your researchers that they're at the level. So that's the market argument. And same with Notre Dame. We want, we're aspiring to be Ivy League level. So we look at University of Pennsylvania. We're not going to want our tenure standards to somehow be lower than theirs. Uh, Now, so that's the market argument. So that's the one thing they're worried about. The other thing they're worried about, I frankly think, is the perennial associate, where they give someone tenure and then that person gets tenure and then they don't do research anymore.
Yeah, that
Which the
happens.
thing that's a problem there is that now you have a bunch of these folks who just kind of stop doing research after they got tenure. And that's a huge risk because you're taking up a line for them where you could have hired someone who could raise the quality of your program, and now it's just someone who's sitting on a line and not so there's like that opportunity cost of tenuring someone who isn't
And this
continuing.
was especially the case in Europe, where we had the slot-based system for God knows how many hundred years, right? So when a slot was taken, the slot was taken, and very often there was very little incentive to actually do anything anymore. So as Europe, especially Germany, like is moving towards this open rank tenure track kind of model, which they've started to do a couple of years ago. This is what it is, and we all spoke about this. Of course, when I got tenure, the requirements were lower, but they were still higher than those people that
Yeah,
evaluated me. Like
yeah,
when I looked at them, I remember this vividly. I was like, how did you ever become a professor? That's what I was thinking at that time. But of course, times are different and these mechanisms change and the expectation change. It's the same with all the Nobel Prize winners say they're like, oh, in today's environment, I wouldn't probably even get a job because I wrote a book every 20 years.
yeah,
So we may not like it, and we debate forever whether that paper currency is the best metric, but it is the metric, and that's exactly what happened. And it shows actually that we're getting better. That's
yeah,
what it shows, I think.
yeah. All right, my dude. Listen, I'm going to let you go to your class or whatever it is you're teaching. And we didn't even get halfway through the questions that we were going to get through, of which, so we highlighted before the podcast today a bunch of questions, which are not even half the questions that we got. And
No,
then we didn't even get through half the questions. So let's have a part B of this podcast. And then,
yeah.
yeah. And then maybe we should have whole podcasts on some of these questions. Yeah.
So we'll end on the cliffhanger here. So we are not done yet, but you'll have to wait a couple of weeks until the next episode comes out. And by the way, in the last episode, it's something like we have to stop here because no one listens till the end. And then I got a couple of messages saying, "No, I'm listening to the end. How can you say that? I'm always listening to the end." So apparently,
Yeah.
people do listen till the
At
very
least
end of
two.
the
Yeah.
podcast. All
Yeah.
right, Nick, this was good. Thanks, by the way. I was meant to say that to you. Thanks for doing this with me, man.
Thank you, brother. I would have never done this. This is
No,
entirely, yeah, you get all the credit for this. I just show up and run my mouth. So, yeah, this is awesome. This is a fun thing we've done.
yes, absolutely. All right, buddy. We'll talk next time, and everyone will do part B of the
And then
Q&A
at
session.
Academy of Management, which is the next time I'll see you, we'll give each other a big hug.
Like a bear hug. I'll
A
do a
big
grizzly bear hug.
frontal, two arms embrace for a significant amount of time. I'll
Yeah, for
hold
at least 3 Mississippis.
it. All right.
Sounds good, buddy. Talk soon.
See you.